Difficult on Purpose, the 13th of December, 2024. I just find religion ridiculous. At such an age, have you looked into it though, or are you just too proud to do so? I mean, sorry to say, but if you find it ridiculous, then why contribute to a discussion about religion, calling other people's views untrue when you don't even want to do some research about it? It's like saying everyone's ridiculous because of what they believe, but you are not. This is just too arrogant and egotistic. Do you really like living like that? Me. Do you not fear the consequences of your beliefs? Just wondering. Of course not. There are no consequences in not believing in something that doesn't exist. But there are, especially when you go around saying things like, God is imaginary to a group of people. What if God is not imaginary and you are wrong? Have you never had such a thought before typing your comments? I mean, consequences are the absolute truth of religion. Had there not been a day of recompense, there would be no purpose in life. What is the purpose of life? I would like to hear your response based on your beliefs, if you would even call them that. Do you even believe in beliefs? The 15th of December, 2024. What do I tell myself? Do you say I'm an atheist, so I don't need to think about this? Or I'm an atheist, so God doesn't exist for me? Like, I always ask myself, how do atheists even explain thoughts? You know, thinking and reason? I say, I don't know. I cannot guess at the divine. It is beyond my capacity to guess at. But I can see the tangible. People hungry, people needing help here and there, and whatever I can do within my means, I do. I don't worry about it. Again, that is good, but it should point to the existence of God, not the contrary. You are good, and that's fine. I just have a problem with labels. You're not an atheist, to me at least, unless you act like one. Well, how does an atheist act? For me, what makes an atheist is singularly whether or not the person does not believe in God. Have you seen the new atheist movements trying to disprove rather than to understand and learn? These people who attack rather than exchange knowledge. Well, I'm not in the business of attacking people, but I have enough certainty in my own way of doing things that I do not feel the need to. Well, what does it take for you to believe in God? Do you, like other people called disbelievers, need to see a sign or something? Or do you just not concern yourself so much with it so long as you're good? A face-to-face meeting or something akin to that? That's why I rely on the after-death judgment side of things. At least then I will have some tangible proof. But mostly I don't concern myself with it much. But you don't go around speaking ill about other people's beliefs, right? Nope, other people's walks are not mine. I concern myself with my own path, whatever it happens to be at the time. Exactly my point though. You can't have something tangible. You can't explain love, but you do know it exists. You can't explain thoughts, but you can reason and think. I only push back when people try to force laws on me that I think are unjust. You don't need to meet God to know He exists, especially if He already said things in the past to others. That is your perspective. Again, this is coming from defining me as a Muslim. Okay, It is not about perspective anymore. It has always been about the truth. Do you believe in the absolute truth? I don't believe in truth with a capital T. What? That something is true even if you don't believe it to be true? Not the subjective truth, just that there is a truth out there that is true no matter what. I think there are things we accept as truth because they make sense to us, but I don't think there is a truth separate from us that exists as a platonic form. When you die, the world will remain, rather than the egocentric perspective. Can people land on the moon and not land on the moon at the same time? That is an absolute truth. People either do or don't. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. We haven't done it in a while. I would like to think that we can. It's enough for me to do my best not to hurt others and expect no harm in return. Do you ever think about morality and what people consider to be moral and why they do? I leave all the God belief to the people who are preoccupied with it. It's not for me. It's not for me to know the mind of any God. It would be arrogant for me to assume I did. Do you believe humans came from a single father and a single mother, the beginning of humanity, all the human race? Sure, there are sometimes I think about morality. Christians say God is good and takes care of every hair on every child's head, and that not a single hair drops from them without his permission. Yet, rapists enter their churches and violate their children, and God is not there, or worse, he is and he does nothing. These things are not theology, man. These are not even religious doctrine. This is basic human principles and morality. Okay, yet rapists, this is where you went off. You have a good reason, but you're explaining theology from theodicy. Have you read the book of Job? I mean, it's true. It's a terrible problem in my country. It is true, but maybe you can't really ask God to intervene when you claim that He has a son. Maybe He doesn't like that, and for that reason what goes on in churches is in vain, you know? I have read the book of Job, and I think it's an unfortunate story. I think it highlights the unconcern and evil of evil. That is the problem. God is not evil. The people who wrote the book of Job ascribed evil to God at the end of the book. That's true. I've read it multiple times. But it was unjust from those who wrote the book to ascribe evil to God. Well, God lets Satan kill Job's family, wife and children, and instead of bringing them back, he just gives him a new family. It seems caused to me. Again, theodicy. God cannot be explained from theodicy. Why do people suffer? Why doesn't God intervene? Maybe He is intervening, you know? You just don't see it because you either don't believe in Him or you doubt His existence. I'm no theologian or apologist. I just read what is written and disagree with it in places, as is my right. This is not about you. Sorry if it came off as such. It is your right. But at the same time, it is God's right to punish them, right? It's okay, my friend. I'm not taking it personally. You have a drive to try and make sense of my perspective. I mean, the people who wrote the book added it to the book. Saying that God is evil is blasphemy on their part, especially when it is written in the Bible. People would read it. I already made sense of your perspective. You're a pacifist, and you hate that people rape and people pillage and murder. Terrorism and whatnot is also in the same scope. Why would God allow that? Is that a question you ask yourself perchance? I mean, why even rely on a book that has to be transcribed, translated, when God, in all His power, could just reveal His truth to us directly, leaving it to fallible humans to try and derive truth from such old texts? Language massaged by time and misunderstanding seems foolish. I'm not a pacifist. I accept war as a part of the human condition and know that sometimes it is necessary to prevent or end evil. I think the war on Assad was justified from the things I have heard he did to the people of Syria, for example. That's a different point, though. God can reveal Himself, but when He does, what will you do? Write another book? Claim you have seen God? Tell people what happened? Then what? Post about it on social media? You know, these types of reasons? Why would God show Himself to anyone if He had already spoken to the world and sent prophets and messengers and people did not believe them? Why would He reveal Himself if, after He sent His final prophet and messenger, Muhammad, peace be upon him, people disbelieved in Him and did Him harm? Why would God show Himself to humans who keep debating and thinking they know better than to worship an unseen God, thinking still that there are other gods beside Him, when it even defies logic? If there were others, each god would run away with what he created. It is just a single God. Well, there was clearly a lack of clarity. I think if the message was clear and could be backed up more than any other religious message, it would get carried much further. How do you mean? From my standpoint, Islam is just as true as Christianity, or Judaism, or the Odinic wolf cult. Same. I think Christianity is true, and Judaism is true, but not in their exact literal sense, not in the exact biblical sense. You have to think of them and absolve God while reading them. Otherwise, they are just as good as a moral and historic book and nothing else. Well, for me, it's another way of saying I think they are equally false. But it's just a quibble. They are not false. You know, I just wonder, do you believe the Trinity? The Trinity is blasphemy. God is a single entity, a single God, but do you believe it? I do like the aesthetics of the Norse pagans, though. Ice and snow, fire, meat and mead, stories and tales of strength and bravery. I think they are neat. Don't believe the Acer actually exists, but oh, the Trinity. No, I don't believe in the Trinity. I'm not a Christian. Norse is just a falsification and a trial at foretelling the future. No one knows the future but God. Ragnarok had happened, but it was written as a future thing. You are far more pleasant to talk to than most of the Christians in my area. Thanks. For me, it is just fun fiction, but I do like some of the values that are bandied about by Norse pagans, and so I adopted those for myself. I wear a Thor's hammer necklace myself. I plan to get tattoos of Munin and Hugin. It is a cultural thing, and for me, I want to see a return of Norse paganism, mostly because the pagans I've engaged with are good people and I like them. Do you think Valhalla is purgatory? Oh no. If Valhalla existed at all, it would be a paradise, but it's only one afterlife for a Norseman. There are others. Valhalla specifically are for the honored warrior dead. I know, I've seen depictions of Odin, but he is just a man. I've read about Norse myths too. Part of his appeal, aspirational, who doesn't like stories of men who, through great effort and struggle and wisdom, rise to higher status. I like his concept as the wanderer. I mentioned it earlier when I said I wanted to come visit you, see your lands for myself. It would be a joy for my eyes to take in places far and away from what I am normally used to. I'd be happy, yeah. Do you believe the Battle of Midgard will happen? No, it's just a cultural thing, a story to take lessons from. Oh, I don't have an actual belief in the Norse characters, but they could stand for philosophical ways of looking at life. You don't think there's an afterlife? Like people being held accountable for what they did? I do not, personally, no. I thought you did believe that. Then why do moral things? Why do good and help others? What's the purpose of life for you? The fleeting moment and the daily immediate pleasures? Hedonism? I unfortunately believe that evil men sometimes live long, lives they do not deserve, and die, and then cease to be. I won't say it's satisfying, but I don't have a belief in the afterlife. Why do good? Because I feel better about myself and about the world when I'm an example of a better person, especially during times where such examples of good people seem to be few. What if those evil men were given long lives so that they would not argue on the day of judgment about their punishment? That they would be made mute and unable to speak to defend themselves? If they even had a case to defend at that point. Man, you said you wanted to see and meet God, to believe He exists after you die. This means there will be something after death. What is that thing for you? Well, it would be satisfying if evil men were held accountable after their deaths. But just because it's satisfying isn't enough for me to believe it's true. I'm saying that I don't believe I will see God after my death, because I don't believe there's a God, and I don't believe there's an afterlife, but I'm open to being proved wrong at that point. It would be a bit silly for me to die, see God, and just say, nope, not real. Do you think you're human? Human, yes, I'm human as we understand humans to be. But it would be even sillier to see him and then be unable to say anything to defend yourself. What about mentally? Like, do you think you're human? I suppose that's a problem for afterlife me. I think me as a concept is human. Once again, getting a bit into the weeds. What is consciousness? I don't know. Best answer I have is an emergent property of the brain. Brain is just a membrane, though. Mind is more important. Consciousness is knowing that you've done something wrong right after doing it, or having the conscious knowledge of having brought happiness to someone else, being conscious of your surroundings and how you feel at certain points. Do you believe there is such a thing as coincidence? Do I believe in coincidence? I suppose the question could be rewarded. Do I believe in fate? I suppose I do. Not in the way you might think, though. There's also free will and making a conscious decision. But you don't believe that. I'd like to think that with a powerful enough computer that had every variable calculated at the beginning of existence, that we could plot the future. If fate is just cause and effect happening, then yes, I believe in fate. Like, when you decide to do something, do you have a moral conundrum on whether or not doing such a thing is moral or not? That is consciousness. No, the future is not measured like that though. There is free will that makes it impossible on a very wide scale. There have been studies done that when one wants something, one is only aware of wanting that thing a few moments after the brain has already lit up in the places that indicate desire for that thing. I think our free will is an illusion. No one can know the future except God. That is something that people who continuously move around would say. Free will is not an illusion. You're free to choose whether to follow what the part of the brain tells you or not, whether to move your arm right or left. You have a choice whether to have a shower or not, whether to stand still. Free will. I mean, I'm no brain mathematician. I'm just a scientific layperson. People better than I have said more or less what I have ineffectively repeated here. The perks of being a CS major. At the end of the day, I don't spend much time concerning myself with any of this. I'm very content to try and live as good and kind a life as I can, die and find out after, if at all. I'm thankful for the time you took to talk with me. You will. No worries, man. I love such discussions. I will hope for your nation and your people's health and well being. Thank you. I hope the same for yours.